everyone. My name is Megan, and I am an adult services librarian for the Aurora Public Library District. What I've got for you today is a little holiday books show and tell. This is primarily targeted at adults. There are a few YA books in here because we know that a lot of our adult patrons and definitely a lot of our adult staff still read and enjoy YA books. So I am going to go through some staff recommendations. And when I'm done, I would love to hear from any of you about your personal recommendations for books for the holidays. Now, when I say holidays, I'm not talking about just Christmas. There are going to be a lot of Christmas books in here just because that's a very big segment of the marketplace. But I've tried to make it a little more exciting by spreading this out through the entirety of the fall and the winter. So we're going to have Diwali, we're going to have Halloween, Thanksgiving, Hanukkah, all the way up to Valentine's Day. This is an especially great time to be talking about our favorite holiday books because we are having the winter reading adventure right now. It runs from December 1st through January 31st. It's a little bingo card. There's one for children and one for teens and adults. You can register on our website, or you can visit any of our library desks at any of our locations to pick up the bingo card and get registered. You can use the bingo card to keep track. Once you get a bingo 5 across, 5 down, or 5 diagonal, then you'll win your prize. Or you can use the app Beanstack. If you've ever participated in any of our seasonal reading adventures before, you will be familiar with Beanstack. It's an app that you can use to enroll in the challenge and keep track of your progress. So I definitely encourage all of you to check that out. The prize for adults and teens this year is a very cute mug with some cute seasonal messages on it. I'm a big fan. So come check that out. Now, first, I'm going to talk a little bit about holiday books in general. As I was doing some of the research for this presentation, I was thrilled to learn that Iceland apparently has a word for the Christmas book flood. In other words, the large amount of books that get published during the Christmas season. It's called Hólabókaflóð. Iceland is a country that has a very strong reading culture, despite its relatively small number of people. They have a very large amount of titles that get published there, both originally in Icelandic and in translation. And it is a tradition to give people books for the holidays. Or of course, to go shopping for yourself for books for the holidays. I thought this was great, and it makes me a little sad that we don't have an equivalent word in English because book sales definitely go up noticeably during the holiday season in the United States. This graph is from 2019, where you can see that in November and December, they did 25% of their annual sales. 2019 was a little bit of a weird year for the publishing industry, but this isn't that different from how it typically plays out. There are a lot of books that come out in the last quarter of the year and a lot of books that get sold in the last quarter of the year. And if you take a look, this is a graph from October of this year, comparing sales from the past 4 years. The dark blue at the bottom is adult books. The sort of medium blue above that is kids' books. The little thin slice of middle blue is YA, and there's a very small, faint sliver at the top, falls under other. So you can see that there's a pretty large percentage of these holiday books that are actually targeted at adults. And so it's interesting to see that during the holidays, we have this big chunk of adults who are purchasing, reading, probably gifting books to people for various holidays. So that was part of why I thought it would be fun to talk about this. It is a really big segment of publishing and of the books that we get here at the library and the books that we see interest in at the library. So over the past few years, we've seen a few new trends in the types of holiday books that are coming out. In a little bit here, we'll get to some of the things that kind of stay the same from year to year. But one of the positive trends that I've seen is there's been more and more inclusivity in publishing in terms of what kinds of holiday books get put out. A lot of holiday books are romances. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But there's been a pretty big expansion in what types of couples they show in these books. For example, on this page, we've got The Holiday Trap, which is about LGBTQ plus couples. Ramon and Julieta is actually a Dia de los Muertos themed romance. The Matzah Ball is a Jewish romance set around Hanukkah. There haven't been quite as many of those as I would expect, possibly because although Hanukkah falls close to Christmas, it's actually not a huge holiday in the Jewish calendar. But we are seeing more and more Jewish writers writing books that are aimed at that particular audience. The Matzah Ball is kind of interesting because it also illustrates another trend with a lot of the Jewish books that we see published, where the characters are culturally and religiously Jewish, but in a lot of cases, they are interested in Christmas in some way, shape, or form, and Christmas also features in the books as well. I'm really not sure why that's a trend for Hanukkah set books in particular. It may be that, you know, as a minority living in the United States, a lot of Jewish authors grow up with this experience of being heavily exposed to Christmas and being potentially interested in celebrating Christmas, or maybe being placed in a situation where they feel like they have to compare it to their own cultural traditions. I'm not sure. But I'm thrilled that there's more and more examples of Jewish romance and Jewish stories that are coming out. And then on the far right, we've got A Holly Jolly Diwali. This was a book that got a lot of buzz and was super popular when it first came out a couple of years ago. It's sort of what you would think of as a traditional holiday romance, in the sense of, you know, it's set around this big cultural celebration. Boy meets girl, they fall in love. The magic of the holidays is present. It makes them reconsider their connections to their family and their culture. But it is set in Diwali in India, which is the festival of lights that takes place every October. It is so far the only book that I have found in our collections that is actually a romance set on Diwali. And I know that we have a Diwali event here at the library every year that is incredibly popular and hugely attended. So I feel like there's a great audience for these books, and I hope to see more of them. Another trend that I've been seeing lately with the holiday books is what I'm referring to on here as witchy romances. Books about witchcraft, frequently set in small towns that kind of have like a Halloween Town vibe. Maybe the people who grew up watching Halloween Town on the Disney Channel are now adults and are writing these books, where you'll get these like fall festival Halloween set books in these little towns with these characters who have magical powers sometimes in a very traditional witchcraft sort of sense, and sometimes in a little more unusual sense. The Ex-Hex by Aaron Sterling, that's a story about a witch who put a curse on her ex-boyfriend, only to have it spectacularly backfire when they both show up in their hometown for the fall festival that happens every October. We also got Payback's a Witch by Lana Harper. She has a series just like the Ex-Hex. The Ex-Hex has a sequel that just came out this year called The Kiss Curse, also aimed at a Halloween audience. Payback's a Witch is kind of a similar story about jilted witches, except it is about two women who are bonding over their failed relationship with the same man, only to discover that perhaps they have a future together. And that one also has a sequel out called From Bad to Cursed. A lot of these romance series, the sequels are not necessarily a direct sequel where we pick right back up with the same couple, but there's sort of an adjacent sequel where we get secondary characters from the first book who have their own love story. Also new this year is Angelica Frankenstein Makes Her Match. This isn't technically about witchcraft, but it is a modern take on Frankenstein, which is science in name only, since we have not, in fact, perfected the scientific art of reanimating corpses. This book about Angelica Frankenstein essentially has her creating her own Frankenstein's monster, not to prove that she can, but to try to make her own perfect man. So I do really enjoy a lot of these like witchy Halloween themed romances. They may not be explicitly set on Halloween, but in a lot of cases, they are retellings of stories like Frankenstein or Dracula that see renewed popularity around Halloween time because they're spooky. So these romances with magical characters are kind of having a moment in pop culture. There's been quite a few of them that have come out over the last couple of years. I pulled a few new Christmas books off the shelf here at the library, and there's quite a few of those that have some type of magical element to them as well. Usually because it's a Christmas book, it's not called out as witchcraft, but it will be things like a character is trapped in a time loop, and they are reliving a particular holiday or a particular month over and over again, and they have to find true love to break the cycle or something like that. So it's just been interesting to see people throw in these little kind of magical twists to these romances. And the other interesting thing is the way that they're marketed too. I think that in the past, a lot of magical romances were marketed closer to the paranormal fiction kind of aspect, but the sort of the cover designs now that we see and the marketing campaigns that we get for these books are much more in line with the type of cover designs and marketing we would see for regular contemporary romance. So they're kind of breaking out of like this paranormal niche and becoming more mainstream. Now, in terms of old favorites, old standards where you can always find holiday books, we've talked a lot about how, you know, even as the way that the books are marketed and the nuances of what they're about change, we still see a lot of romances for the holidays. You know, of course, we've got authors like Debbie Macomber who always put out some type of holiday family story or romance. And I think a big part of that is, you know, people during a celebratory time, but also kind of a stressful time, people want happy stories. They want endearing and hopeful stories. And that's why I think a lot of the holiday themed mysteries that we get, because we do get holiday mysteries, fall under the specific category of cozy mystery. I don't think that people are necessarily, with the exception of Halloween, looking to be actually scared or discomforted by the mysteries they're reading at the holidays. Cozy mysteries are generally set in small, close-knit communities. They have a pretty strong focus on character relationships and familiar themes rather than violence or gore. So we're not talking about a dark mystery. Yes, there is murder. Yes, there is some suspense. But you always know that the perpetrator will be brought to justice at the end. So it's meant to be a very like curl up by the fireside kind of read. On this slide, you can see a couple of the most famous examples. Leslie Meyer's Lucy Stone mysteries are set entirely around holidays. So any kind of holiday that you are looking for a book for, whether it be the fall winter holidays that we're covering in this presentation, or whether it be the 4th of July, St. Patrick's Day, etc., Leslie Meyer's got you covered. Her Lucy Stone series has been running for about 30 years. So she's been through a lot of different holidays. And then we've also got Joanne Fluke and the Hannah Swenson mysteries. The theme of those cozy mysteries is actually baking. But because the holidays are traditionally a time when we do a lot of baking in our culture and in many other cultures, there are several Hannah Swenson mysteries that are holiday themed. The Christmas Cupcake Murder is one of the newer ones, but she's got multiple Hannah Swensons coming out every year. The Chet and Bernie mysteries by Spencer Quinn also have It's a Wonderful Wolf. Another common theme for cozy mysteries is animals. You'll find a lot of cozy mysteries where the protagonist can talk to their loyal dog or loyal cat, or if they can't talk to them, the dog or the cat are always inextricably tied up in the crime that's taking place. There's even a few cozy mystery series where the dog or the cat is the protagonist, and they are solving crimes with either the help or the hindrance of the humans around them. So Chet and Bernie is about a detective and his loyal dog. There's a whole series of those. It's a Wonderful Wolf is the holiday entry. They hire another private detective to work on a case with them, but then his mom calls upset because he hasn't shown up to light the Hanukkah candles with her. So it becomes a mystery stacked on top of a mystery. Why did he disappear? Is it related to the case that they were working on, etc.? I've also got, after this presentation, I will have available for everybody a book list with all of these books in it, in addition to a few more. So I've got a couple more examples of cozy mysteries. You know, cozies can take all sorts of interesting themes and then layer a holiday on top of that. For example, there are a lot of cozies about people who run bookstores or people who run knitting shops, people who have quilting clubs, you know, crafting, cooking, reading, kind of these like domestic hobbies. There are also a subset of cozy mysteries that have to do with home repair. So there's an example on the book list of a Valentine's Day set home repair cozy mystery. So if you are looking for some type of very specific holiday book, cozy mysteries are a great bet for you. Getting outside specific genres for a minute, we'll talk about a few books that are more along the lines of literary fiction or popular fiction. it's interesting to see a lot of the common themes that will pop up among these holiday set books. One of the common themes is introspection, characters taking a look back at their life over at least the past year or possibly their entire life. Lillian Boxfish Takes a Walk is one of those books. It's about a woman, elderly woman named Lillian Boxfish, who is taking a walk through New York City to get to the New Year's Eve party that she has been invited to. And it's simply, the entire book takes place over the course of her walk as she reassesses her relationship to New York City and thinks about all of the decades that she has lived there, how the city has changed, how she has changed. Another common theme has to do with companionship. Start Without Me by Joshua Max Feldman kind of falls into both the companionship and introspection theme camps. It's about two characters who are trying to get home for Thanksgiving. They end up being stranded in the airport together by delayed flights, and they form this bond as they reckon with their family ties, with their past, their choices, how they feel about seeing their families for the holidays, etc. And then moving even further towards kind of the companionship side of the story, one of our other staff members is a big fan of The Christmas Cookie Club by Anne Perlman. It follows the relationships of a group of women who have a Christmas cookie exchange every year. So it spends several years with them, meeting up and seeing how their lives change, how their friendships change and deepen, and how the season kind of brings them together. We'll also talk a little bit about nonfiction here. You will notice that I did not get into cookbooks. Cooking and baking is really big for holiday time, and that could be a whole entire presentation unto itself. So I decided to focus on some books that people are maybe less aware of what types of books are out there for nonfiction beyond holiday cookbooks. There's a lot of great books like the Atlas of Christmas that show traditions around the world. Christmas, a Biography is a really, really well-reviewed historical look at Christmas and how a lot of the modern traditions that we have sprung out of historical events and kind of changed and adapted over time. In some ways, they barely resemble the tradition that originally started them. And in other ways, they're surprisingly similar. We also do have quite a few books that have more of a spiritual, religious seeking kind of component to them. A great example for Jewish patrons is Celebrating the Jewish Year. There's a series of these books. I threw up the one specifically that is about the winter holidays. The series is about the traditions that Jewish people celebrate throughout the year, their origins, where did they come from? Why are they spiritually important? Readings from religious scholars and readers. There are quite a few of these books about Hanukkah, about Christmas, about other religious holidays to provide people with food for thought and kind of a way to recenter themselves around why they celebrate these holidays and why they're important to them. Also, I personally love Halloween. We have a ton of great books that are all about ghost stories, graveyards, other spooky things. This one, Trick or Treat by Lisa Morton, is kind of a cultural history of Halloween. Halloween has its roots outside of America, but a lot of the way that we celebrate it has become pretty Americanized at this point. So it's interesting to take a look back at how traditional holidays like All Souls Day have kind of become blended and remixed to create the type of Halloween that we have now. And then finally, the part that I'm sure you are all the most excited for, I've got a few new books, brand new, on our shelves this year. We've got The Plot and the Pendulum, which is a cozy mystery, as I talked about before. That is a Halloween-themed entry in the Library Lovers and Mystery series by Jen McKinley. It involves a rare edition of Poe writings that gets donated to a library, but turns out to be connected to a mysterious murder. This is a long-running book-themed cozy series. Blackmail and Bibinka is another cozy series. This one's set around Christmas time. It's the newest entry in the Tita Rosie's Kitchen series, which started with arsenic and adobo. This has been a really popular, really fun series. It's about a Filipino family, so it gives us a cultural perspective that we don't get in a lot of cozy mysteries or holiday books, typically. I did say there was going to be some YA in here, so I threw in the book that I'm possibly the most excited about, which is Whiteout, over on the left there. That is a collaboration between a bunch of YA authors of color, including Angie Thomas, Nick Stone, Nicola Yoon, Tiffany D. Jackson. They had a collaboration earlier called Blackout that was set during the summer during a power outage. And each of them contributed a story about teenagers essentially finding romance during this blackout. Whiteout is set in Atlanta during an unexpected snowstorm during Christmas time. As someone who grew up in Atlanta, I can tell you they are absolutely not prepared for snow during Christmas. So this, of course, leads to a lot of chaos in these teenagers' lives and pushes them into some romantic entanglements. So if you enjoyed Blackout, or if you're a fan of any of these really stellar authors, definitely give Whiteout a try. The last example I've got on this slide is One Last Gift by Emily Stone. Emily Stone has written some other romance books. This is kind of a softer and more contemplative romance. The main character is still struggling with grief after her brother passed away. She discovers that he's left her a holiday-themed scavenger hunt. And she decides to undertake this scavenger hunt with the help of her and her brother's estranged best friend. A more introspective story about grief. Possibly a good cathartic read for people who maybe struggle emotionally with some similar issues during the holidays. We've got The No-Show, was also new this year. That is a very cute kind of romance contemporary women's fiction story about three women who discover that they were all stood up on Valentine's Day by the same man. So the question then becomes, what are they going to do about it? Are they going to find him? Are they going to get their revenge? Or are they going to bond with each other? Are they going to find love in different places? And what's the deal with the guy who stood all three of them up? That's a pretty fun one. Another fun holiday romance is You're a Mean One, Matthew Prince. That is a queer romance between a man who has no Christmas spirit whatsoever, but is sent to spend the holidays with his grandparents in a small town where he meets another guy who will teach him a little bit about having a more open heart and more joy in the holiday season. We also had this summer mega author Colleen Hoover released a Thanksgiving themed book called Finding Perfect. That book is about a group of friends who are reuniting for Thanksgiving, only to discover that one of them is threatened by a dangerous secret. This book is super short. It's basically a novella. You could probably read it in a single sitting. So it's the kind of thing that's great to like throw in your airplane carry-on if you're going somewhere for the holidays, to visit relatives, keep yourself occupied for a little bit of time without committing to a huge brick of a book. And then last but certainly not least, I've got another YA example. 8 Nights of Flirting is about a teenage girl who is determined to spend Hanukkah finding somebody to date for the winter. But she gets snowed in with her nemesis / former crush. And of course, all of us who read romance have some idea of how that's going to go. So, like I mentioned earlier in the presentation, I've got a whole book list for y'all of all the books that were mentioned in this presentation, as well as a few additional ones. I've got a Valentine's Day time loop on here. I've got a tea-themed spooky cozy mystery on here. So I will have that available on our website, aurorapubliclibrary.org. And also at any of our branches, they will be able to print you off a copy if you are interested. I would also love to hear from you about your favorite holiday books. You can drop me an email at mcavitt@aurorapubliclibrary.org. That's mcavitt@aurorapubliclibrary.org. Or you can reach out to us through the contact us form on our website. If there's anything that you want to recommend. If I get some recommendations from people, I will happily update our book list to include all of our customer recommendations. In the meantime, I hope that you got some fun ideas for some things to read, gift, or recommend for the holidays. And I hope that you will check out our winter reading adventure. We've got lots of great displays up around our various branches to help you find some holiday themed books. Although, of course, disclaimer, if you're feeling a little grinchy this season, you do not have to read anything holiday themed to participate in the winter reading adventure. There are lots of, you can read whatever you want, and there are lots of other activities that will give you credit, such as coming to a library program, trying a new recipe, and other things that will get you out and having new experiences during the holidays. So again, I look forward to hearing your recommendations. I hope you got some good stuff out of this presentation. And I hope that you all have a lovely holiday season.